up, we do want to take a minute to talk about season 5, which again premieres tonight at midnight. We're recording this on Wednesday, so on the eve of that. So when season 5 opens, basically the last we left Joe, he had finally returned to New York City, and his past has been completely expunged thanks to Marianne, who apparently isn't as innocent as he thought that she was this whole time. That all comes to fruition at the end of last season. And now that he's back in New York, he's actually living as part of one of the wealthiest families in the world. So Joe's really set up in a good place here. And so with that in mind, I wanted to have us make a few predictions here. How do we think Joe's going to fare in New York City this time around? He hasn't been back in a while. So, I mean, is he going to be successful? Is everything going to work out? I mean, we know things are not going to work out, but...
Either it all ends here or he manages to get away again. To me, it's one of those two.
Yeah. I'm just thinking about the trailer... And it's like very clear that he has a new fixation as well. And it's just unclear of what like the timing of that is going to be throughout the season, I don't think. But I think his former victims are going to haunt him in one way or another. He's probably going to continue having psychic breaks throughout this season, and I think he's gonna be gone at the end of the season, but I don't know if it's him being gone because he'll be dead. I think he's going to disappear. That would be my prediction, that he disappears, is presumed dead, but nobody ever really knows what happened to him.
Yeah.
I feel like they want to leave the door open.
I like what you said about his past coming back to haunt him, Laura, because New York for him is really an emotional graveyard. So I wouldn't be surprised to see elements from the previous 4 seasons start to surface and come back to get him. Because really, at the end of the day, his past is his biggest enemy. It's not any one person right now. It's a collection of all of the things that he's done up until this point.
Yeah, I agree with you there. I think that like we could definitely expect some sort of hallucinations to happen again. Maybe similar, but not quite to how he was seeing Candace everywhere. She turned out to be alive, so that's not the same. But, you know, like just the sheer fact that he made Beck a best-selling author posthumously, you know, which was something that we didn't touch on, but also absolutely insane that he managed to get her manuscript published. I just have a feeling that the ghost of her would haunt him in some way.
Yeah.
You know?
And it is kind of hard to imagine that book not coming back to bite him in the ass somehow. Like, it feels like there is karma waiting there, because that was the manuscript, and it's been a minute, forgive me if I bungle this, but Beck was writing her story, and she was essentially writing it to frame her psychiatrist.
Yeah, John Stamos.
Yeah. Instead of, so basically blaming him for everything that Joe did. And it actually led to his arrest. So,
right.
Yeah.
And I'm sure Joe went through and combed that manuscript, you know, to make sure that there was nothing that would corroborate him. But,
right. Yeah. But yeah, that's an interesting thread that they could pull if they wanted to.
For sure. Yeah. Micah, you had some interesting thoughts about how, like, ideally we'd like to see the series end.
So I'd be disappointed if he's killed at the end of the series. I'd also be somewhat disappointed if he ends up inside of his own cage. That feels a little bit too on the nose for me, especially with just how this series has been written and it's progressed over the course of the last 4 seasons. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if it ends with Joe on top and getting away with something else, because that's just the way it's been for 4 seasons. And I don't want to say that's the moral of the story, because I don't think there's any morals that we can really identify here. But one thing that came to mind, and we mentioned briefly his son earlier. So I'm curious. I don't know how it would work. Maybe it's a time jump at the end where his son is older, maybe is in his teenage years now, and there's some kind of interaction between the two of them, or maybe it's almost like a legacy thing where, let's not forget, Joe and Love produced this child. So there's a chance that he's going to be pretty fucked up too. So yeah. I wonder if that is somehow part of the narrative. I haven't like fully fleshed it out in my mind, but I wouldn't be surprised if that comes into play.
So someone else like takes up the mantle as a result of him. And I wonder too if it's not his son, if maybe like Paco will come back and because he's seen, I think he finds back and runs away, right, when she thinks that she's
leaves
escaped.
her.
Right, he leaves her. So I think that he's got a pretty good grasp of who Joe is, even though Joe was so nice to him. But I could see something like that influencing somebody young that has been abused. You know what I mean? And it kind of, that would still be history repeating itself, because in one of the seasons we do go into Joe's past, and he talks about how, he saw his mom be abused as well. And so,
it'll be interesting to see too, the role that social media plays this season, because in the trailer, there's definitely an emphasis put on the fact that Joe is going to get doxxed, basically. And multiple people are going to be outing him on the web for being a murderer. And it'll be really interesting to see that dynamic shift, because up until this point, Joe has been using social media to spy on other people, but now social media is going to be putting him in the spotlight, which is exactly where he doesn't want to be.
That's a great call out.
Yeah, that's really good. And the fact that when he's coming back to New York, isn't he doing some kind of interview in the finale?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Well, you're right. And to that point, it's going to be harder for him to hide now, because he has been welcomed into this highly influential family. So the days of him slipping through the cracks are kind of over.
But the one thing that he has that maybe you could say he didn't have as much of before is money, right? Like
that's true.
And then the influence of this family to squash anything that might surface that is going to implicate him or damage the family name potentially. So I could see that playing a big role here too. I don't know, it's so hard. Like I want to just like say this is what I think is going to happen, but now I don't know this offhand, but are there 5 books, or is it just the one?
I believe there are about 4 or 5, yes.
Oh, okay.
But from what I've heard online, they deviate a lot. The series deviates a lot from the books. So it would probably be a completely different experience reading those.
Yeah. Yeah, I do wonder, because I got the impression that at least the first season was probably fairly accurate. So I wonder how close they would have stayed to the story if it had stayed on Lifetime. Also, I really want to know who pitched this story to Lifetime. Like, who was like, yes, serial killer, this. Lifetime.
We need Gossip Girl himself, Penn Badgley.
I wanted to ask you, because I thought this is where you were gonna go earlier, but when you said Joe would disappear, were you just like go off the grid, or is it more maybe he gets locked up in an asylum somewhere?
I think think he goes off the grid because, I mean, everyone likes money, and there's always money in a reboot, especially of a popular franchise. So I don't see them painting themselves into a corner. I think whatever they do will be ambiguous enough that he could either have a reboot or not have a reboot, and it would work.
Maybe he'll end up with the White Lotus.
My God, can you imagine? I thought you were about to say maybe he'll end up at the White House, and I was going to say maybe. Who knows? But yeah, he would be an ideal guest, I think, for the White Lotus.
Well, I think that does it for our little chat recapping and reminiscing on the first 4 seasons of Netflix's You. Thank you so much for listening if you joined us for this. We are a fairly new podcast, so we do need your support. And the first way you can support us is to follow us in your favorite podcast app and also leave a review. Second of all, you can also follow us on any of our social media channels. We're on TikTok, YouTube, Twitch, and Instagram as What the Hype Podcast. Our website is whatthehypepodcast.com. And on X, we are What the Hype Show. If you want to email us about anything, you can do that at whatthehypepodcast@gmail.com. And we will be doing a listener feedback episode fairly soon. So if you do have any feedback for us, we'd love for you to drop us a line over there. And then finally, if you have a friend or family member that needs an introduction to you, or they want to learn more, or they're just a fan of pop culture, be sure to share this episode with them and tell them that we're walking through a different aspect of pop culture every week.
Speaking of, in addition to covering You, we are also covering season 2 of The Last of Us here at What the Hype. You can actually join myself, Eric, our friend Chelsea, and potentially a couple of other members of the What the Hype panel on Sunday nights at 10:30 p.m. Eastern Time, following the latest episode of The Last of Us. Episode 3 coming up this weekend. Hope that we'll see you over on YouTube.
Yeah, I'm impressed that we went this entire episode and didn't call Joel once.
Honestly, I was thinking about that.
That's true.
This is so confusing. Because in my head, multiple times when I was thinking about this, I thought Joel, and I was like, no. Different character.
You did a good job.
Different dark-haired protagonist.
Well, speaking of Joe Goldberg, if you do want more Netflix You content, be sure to come back next week. We'll be back to offer up our full spoiler-filled thoughts on You, the final season. But that does it for this week. So thanks for joining us, and we'll see you all next time.
See y'all next time.